Okay.
Welcome to the October 21st Instructional Committee meeting. I am Brenda Hastings, and with me tonight are board members Jess Campbell, Sarah Robinson, and Barb Higgins. Also in attendance tonight are Assistant Superintendent Kim Yarlott, John Ferruzio, Superintendent Murphy, and Heather Santito, a reading specialist with the school district. So we're going to get some good, fun information tonight.
Yay!
Pass it over to you, Kim, when you are ready.
Okay, thank you, and thank you to everyone who's here tonight. We really appreciate it. We're going to, as a part of the request of the Instructional Committee, you asked for a presentation on what is reading, what does literacy look like at the elementary schools. Things have changed. It's been a while since we've reported out to you about not only what it looks like at the elementary schools, but also what are some impactful changes that we've made recently based on research and data. And so down the road, we'll be presenting some data. We'll be presenting some SAS scores and some iReady scores and et cetera. But it would be nice to just look at the instructional component of literacy. So we have a fabulous group of reading specialists, K through 6, that we meet every other Friday for half the day. And we've been looking at many different topics and initiatives. And this year, we have a committee formed who is assigned with revising the ELA scope and sequence of the curriculum. So that meaning all of the standards and competencies that we address at every grade level. So this is kind of a little preview, a little snapshot of what it looks like in the schools and what you can anticipate changing down the road based on two things. One, best practices and research, and the other is any changes that we make to the scope and sequence of our ELA curriculum once it's adopted by the board in May. So this PowerPoint that we're about to present was put together by the reading specialist and myself, and Heather has kindly offered to be the person who is going to present it. So we really appreciate you being here.
You're welcome.
So thank you.
Awesome. So I am the reading specialist at Abbott Downing School, just in case anybody didn't know who I was. And yeah, this was a group effort. We definitely worked together to kind of give you what sounded like we were tasked with is you just wanted to see what does literacy look like currently in the at the elementary level. So we wanted to kind of give you a little shot of that. So this graphic, just wanted to start with, shows you what some of the core components of reading are. You may have seen it before. It's called Scarborough's Rope, and it's from Hollis Scarborough, a doctor who kind of just came up with a representation of everything that goes into being able to be a skilled reader. It takes two different strands, main strands, the red and the blue parts, and breaks them out into all of the very individual strands that are totally interconnected, but also independent of each other. So there's the language comprehension side of things, which includes background knowledge, vocabulary, language structures, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge. And all of those things work together to come up with your not only comprehension of text, but just even in listening to text. And then the blue rope represents the word recognition side, which is composed of phonological awareness, ability to understand sounds and how they work together, not dependent on text, just in the brain, the sound piece. And then decoding, which is lifting the print from the page. And then sight recognition is the brain's ability to automatically recognize words without having to decode. And we, of course, want that sight recognition to be high. So those strands work together, and then together that weaves to become, as the reader becomes increasingly strategic and increasingly automatic, that equals fluent, skilled reading with strong comprehension. So that's kind of our goal. We want kids to be able to do all of these things. So we just really like this graphic to give you that kind of picture.
And so I want to point out, too, that many districts are using this particular graphic as they look at what's missing from their reading instruction and what might be strong in their reading instruction. And you will see this graphic quite often in a reference to the science of reading.
So lots of our teachers have been receiving some more professional development around this. So many teachers are currently taking the letters training or finishing up the letters training. A lot have received training in specific programs, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And there's ongoing coaching with reading specialists that's happening to help teachers to get a stronger understanding of all of these components of reading. So we wanted to kind of walk you through the then, the now, and the future of where Concord is. So in the past, looking at some of these main components we just showed you, phonemic awareness, phonics, the comprehension fluency, and then writing is kind of, it obviously ties in very nicely with reading, but it was not represented with the reading rope because it's writing, not reading, but writing as well. In the past, we did not have any program that addressed phonemic awareness. There may have been pieces that were embedded, but no specific program. For phonics, we were using a program called Words Their Way Word Study, which did address phonics, but not very explicitly and systematically. For comprehension and fluency, we were using a lot of the Fountas and Pinnell materials. The mini lessons, the guided reading groups were based on the BAS, which is the benchmark assessment system assessment. And that's where kids were getting all of their comprehension and fluency work. And then for writing, we've been using the units of study by Lucy Calkins. So that's kind of where we were, and we want to compare that to where we are now. And we're going to break it up into a K1, 2, 3, and a 4, 5 span because there kind of are some differences in there. So now in kindergarten and first grade, we've adopted a program called Haggerty. It is a phonemic awareness program, and it is systematic, and it goes through lots of the components of phonemic awareness, segmenting and blending and addition and substitution, all different varieties of ways that kids need to be adept at manipulating sounds in words. And it's all done orally. It's very quick. It's like a 10-minute a day thing that the teachers do whole class, not a heavy lift on teachers, a lot of fun actually. A lot of kids see it as a game. So we have that both in our kindergarten and our first grade now as tier 1. For our phonics, we've adopted foundations, and that goes past first grade, but for K1, they are both doing foundations, which is about a 30-minute lesson a day. Daily, it's whole class, and it really just is very systematic and builds upon the phonetic principle, building into then blending words, and it slowly adds new phonics concepts, keeping the old skills being practiced and then slowly adding on new ones. Comprehension, and the phonics, the foundations program is both a reading and a spelling program. It attacks both. Reading is like the inhaling and spelling is like the exhaling. So it addresses both. Comprehension and fluency, we've made some changes where we are not just using Fountas and Pinnell purely. We are still using some of their materials, but we have also really kind of looked more at small group instruction, and it's more skill-based using multiple different materials. Some may be decodables based on that exact phonics skill that a student or group of students might need. We do still use trade books, so we're using good, nice, strong text with good vocabulary, and that is not gone away. We are using those two. We're just using them hand in hand and really trying to be cognizant of what does the child need and addressing that. For whole class, we are still using interactive read-alouds, which get at some of that language comprehension and the strands of the rope that are the syntax and the semantics and vocabulary, all of that. It comes in through those read-alouds, comprehension strategies. And mini lessons, and those both come from the Fountas and Pinnell classroom. For writing, we are still using units of study by Lucy Calkins, so that has not changed.
Heather, can I just ask?
Yeah.
One of the consistent difficulties I had as an elementary teacher teaching reading was the wide range of abilities with my readers. I might have some that were no letter sense at all, right through
Right.
very advanced. Are you still seeing that, or is that gap closed? And I'm concerned that small group instruction, if you've got 7 or 8 groups in your classroom, how are you getting to those kids every day?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think we see is when we were doing those groups based on the BAS, based on the benchmark assessment system, you might have, these guided reading levels that were so broad. But when we started really looking at those guided reading levels, within those guided reading levels, you might have, let's say, a level M. But those level M kids all looked different, right? They had really different skill needs. So by grouping somewhat I mean, this again is the K1 span, but by grouping them based on those phonics skills, you do kind of lessen a little bit of that.
Okay,
because
great.
now we're looking at what kids need basically like CVC work, consonant, vowel, consonant, which ones are working on digraphs. So it's not this broad band of like a level, guided reading level that could have lots of different phonics skills. We're really kind of targeting those phonics skills. So I think that's helping.
Great. Are you still using the bear?
We are not using it as a tier 1 now, no.
Okay.
I think we do sometimes use it as a tier 2 if we want to get some spelling information. Foundations has that embedded. So there's lots of spelling assessments as part of Foundations, and we felt like it was a bit redundant. So we're relying more on the data that we're getting from Foundations.
I'm glad to hear that you found a workaround for that.
The other piece is that the Hegarty and Foundations are taught whole group. And so that really helps levelize the playing field for people. So students are getting first this really good base that's whole group, and you're not having to pull so many reading groups. And then they're getting targeted instruction based on skill levels.
And are teachers still required to work with all students in the classroom, or if you have a student who receives special education services, can they get their targeted reading instruction with that teacher?
So we still are trying to have the classroom teacher also give them instruction, so they're getting that double dip, so that we're not supplanting with the special ed, the tier 1 there. But they are, because they're getting tier 1 with their classroom teacher now, whole class, there is a little more flexibility there.
Great, thank
Yeah.
you.
All right, moving on to grades 2 and 3. You'll notice that there's not a phonemic awareness component here because research has shown that once you get a really solid base of phonemic awareness instruction in the earlier years, the K and the 1, direct instruction whole class isn't as necessary. We do still use it in tier 2, and kids who might be struggling are still getting phonemic awareness instruction as needed, but it's not a whole class component anymore. There are pieces that are still, obviously, as you're working with phonics, you are still building some of those phonemic awareness skills, but we don't use the Hegarty above first grade. They are still getting Foundations, and it's very in-depth. By the time they are done level 3 in Foundations, they've learned all the syllable types and all of the basic spelling patterns that they need to know in order to read and spell. For comprehension and fluency, looks very similar to K and 1. There are some that are still using decodables, not as many. By the time we get them in 2nd and 3rd grade, they're moving more into trade books and being able, once they have a strong handle on the basic concepts of phonics, then they don't need those decodables. We just use them maybe to support as needed if there's a certain gap or area that they need strengthening. Skill-based groups are still using then those trade books and some decodables. Interactive read-alouds and mini lessons are still happening for whole class. That's tier 1 instruction in those comprehension pieces. There are also iReady lessons from the 3rd grade on up. It's not 2nd grade at this point, but that some 3rd grade teachers are able to pull lessons from iReady as well. And then writing, as you'll see throughout, is Units of Study by Lucy Calkins.
Do you want to explain what decodable books and
Sure.
trade books are?
Yes, so decodables are books that have a progression based on phonics. So they are only...
See Jane run.
Well, yeah, that's the old school way. Yes, they have come a long way. Where now the decodables, they're not a nonsensical story. They really have some really great materials out there now, but they are... research shows that if kids are not practicing the decoding skills, then they're not building that orthographic mapping and orthographic memory in their brains. So what we used to do in the early grades is they were really depending on look at the picture, make a guess, maybe look at the first letter. We know now that that's not really the best way to help the reading brain grow. So what we want is for kids to look at all the letters and really get skilled and strong at sounding out words and eventually not having to sound them out, having those patterns just mapped in their brain and they know them. Yes.
So I'm really glad that you mentioned sort of moving away from that picture and guessing
Yeah.
and trying to like infer what's going to happen next
Yes.
when kids don't even have that phonemic awareness yet.
Exactly.
I just wanted to give you an opportunity because I know I'm one of those know-it-all parents that like read Sold a Story or listened to Sold a Story, which I'm sure has come across your desk because you are a literacy professional. How would you respond to parents who are concerned about Fountas and Pinnell and Lucy Calkins sort of getting this rep in like the public sphere of being really outdated and maybe not as beneficial as we thought it would be. Because I notice we're still using pieces. Would you mind sort of explaining why those pieces are remaining as valuable? I think other parents would really like to sort of hear your rationale.
Yeah. So right now there are the pieces that I think came out in Sold a Story. A lot was around that phonics and decoding piece, and that they're in the early years, kids being asked to not actually decode and learn how to read, but to guess. So that's why we have made some shifts. We are still in the process of looking, analyzing, and we're going to talk in a little bit about our plan of what's coming next and what we want to still look at. So I will speak to that a little bit more in the future slides. But I think that there are some pieces of the materials and the books that are beautiful, great trade books. They are racially wonderfully representative of lots of different cultures. Those pieces, we see there's some value in the resources and in some of the lessons. We're trying to be very choosy in what we're using and what we're doing, and grow our teachers' knowledge and helping. It's something that you can't just jump ship and make a quick changes. Really, we have to help our teachers to come on board with understanding and professional development, and provide them with resources that will help support that. And sometimes that takes a little bit of time. Does that answer
thank
your
you.
question?
That's a perfect answer.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So as far as grades 4 and 5, so you'll see word study, it changes from phonics to word study, because once kids have a really good, solid understanding of phonics and they have those basic building pieces in place, they don't need as much instruction in phonics as they do in how to apply more deeper morpheme kind of work, which is thinking about prefixes, suffixes, roots, those Latin and Greek bases. So they move into 4th and 5th grade into working in a program called Morpheme Magic, and we are just starting that this year. So this is a new program for us. Our teachers we have all been trained in it, and we are working. It's a first year implementation, so we are kind of learning that program as we go. But it really is helping them just kind of in more of the application in the deeper understanding of how words work and the word parts. For comprehension and fluency, similar to the K1 and the 2-3 as far as the interactive read alouds and the mini lessons and the iReady lessons, we're pulling from those. Really trying, I think a lot of schools too are looking at our standards and trying to say here, more, not so much following this Foundation Vanell program, but saying here's our standards, state standards, and what do we have that will support teaching that? And so there are some things that we can pull from Foundation Vanell, there's things we can pull from iReady, and then we're just crafting together really to teach standards. And looking at that. So in the upper grades, the decodables really kind of fade off to a very small percentage. There's not many kids at that level that will need that. They are using still some of the guided reading books. We are trying to be careful not to necessarily pigeonhole kids in a guided reading level, and making sure they're getting access to grade level materials no matter what their reading level is, because we know, as you see in SAS, they're going to be accountable to those skills and have to do that. So we are really trying to find ways to bring those things in and give kids access to grade level text. And then for writing, there's the units of study there as well. So as far as, I think this was your question, our future plans.
Yeah. I mean, hence the then, now, future.
Right.
I just jumped the gun.
No worries. There was an RSA that was passed, which you're probably aware of, that is supposed to go into effect and to be solidly in place by July of 27. And it talks about mandating, making sure that every student is receiving measurable, evidence-based instruction that is explicit and systematic. Those are some of the exact words that come right from the RSA. And in all of the specific areas, phonemic awareness, phonics, both decoding and encoding, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, and writing. So that's where, when we started with the reading rope, we looked at that, and really all of these pieces other than writing are part of that reading rope. So that's where we're kind of really trying to make sure, are we addressing and are we making sure all of our kids are going to be skilled with all of these components? So to do that, you want to pause?
Yes, I did want to mention that Concord got ahead of the curve a little bit by, typically what we would do is we would look at a curriculum, we would look at revisions to the curriculum. When I say curriculum, I'm talking about overarching competencies and the standards. when I talk instruction, I'm talking about instruction and programs. And so our program was the Fountas and Pinnell. For us to wait till 2027, well, actually, we started before this mandate came out. We started to look at a need to make changes prior to the ELA revision committee meeting, because we started to understand what's best for students, and slowly brought in a systematic way, brought in the foundations, the Heggerty, and now the Morphine Magic. So you would guess that this is an unfunded mandate, and that schools are going to be, scrambling to be able to meet this very high standard for something being evidence-based and explicit and systematic. So we got ahead of the curve, and we still have places to go. But we wouldn't typically do that order. We wouldn't make a change until we looked at the curriculum, but we couldn't wait for the curriculum work to be done, and we knew that this fit in with best practices.
And I think to your question, we saw the need as well, and it was evident that, we need to make some changes right now, that kids can't wait, and we need to make some shifts. So
And
we
I would
did.
agree with you that the RSA is interesting. I watched that go through the house, and tip of the hat to you I don't know how they're going to enforce it, honestly, but you guys will do an amazing job.
Thank you. So, in order to address that, we have an ELA curriculum revision committee, and there's a 3-year plan. This year, the 24-25 school year, our goal is to review the competencies K to 12. Then next year, based on that review, and we have a hypothesis, but we don't exactly know what that will reveal. Based on whatever that review reveals, we'll complete a complete program review and make recommendations if we think there's more programming that needs to change, or more materials that might need to be purchased to maybe firm up any of those areas that we don't feel are strong. And then 26, 27, we're hoping to, at that point, be able to implement any new programs that were decided on by the committee. So we do feel that probably there will be a little bit more work. We've made some great changes and great strides, and already see some positive effects in kids and their learning and their understanding, but we know that there's still some more work that we do need to do. So we are open to that. I'm going to let Kim talk about the budgetary side of things.
Take it away, boss.
So, you've seen me come before you asking for funding for foundations and Heggerty, and now Morphine Magic and iReady. Leave out the decodable text for now. All of those have a returning budgetary impact year to year with licenses. And it's been a heavy lift. And the decodable text seemed like an urgent need to get into the hands of teachers. So we were able to use some of the instructional grant funds to be able to purchase some decodable text now. So we've been very clever and careful about how we're spending funds, but also knowing that there was something urgent about this. We do anticipate some need for, once we do the curriculum work, those gaps that we showed you where we need materials to work on some of the things that we're sort of missing. We need to fill in some holes and stop plugs, et cetera. We anticipate adopting a new writing program, and either a reading program or more reading materials in the future. So it would actually, we would make the proposal for 26, 27.
If you could get us just roundabout estimates of what these programs might cost so that we could start planning in advance, that would be great. I mean, we're not saying it would be locked in or anything, but we're going to come to you next year and we're going to need $500,000 for a new writing program or whatever it would be.
I mean, curriculums are expensive.
They're expensive.
They're
right?
super
So
expensive.
the earlier that we can start planning for that, the better.
Will do.
Thank you.
So that's pretty much what we had to present. I know you've asked a few questions along the way. Are there any other thoughts, questions that I can help with?
Yes, absolutely. And this is probably more for Kim than for you because you're focused on elementary grades. I have noticed, and this is an issue that we're really working on in the school district, is trying to create some uniformity in curriculum for all of the elementary schools together. So this is it's an example that I'm going to provide, but I just had a kiddo start at Runlet, and everybody's reading The Wild Robot because it's got a movie coming out. It's a really engaging story.
Fantastic
It's a
story.
fantastic book, except some kids have already read it 3 times, and they're revisiting the literature a 3rd time in 6th grade. And I know this is really, like, teachers are just like, what's going to keep my students engaged? What are they going to identify with? What will spark joy for reading? Excellent metrics. That's why they chose it. But I'm noticing that there's not that conversation intergrade and interschool about, hey, what are you guys planning on bringing forward so that I'm not repeating a piece of literature a 3rd time for some of these kids? Because at this point, middle schoolers, they're blowing it off. Like, oh, I've already read this. You know how they get. So I just, as part of the future, because I don't expect that to happen overnight. That's too much to ask of 7 schools, all different grade levels. But do we have plans for that sort of integration and conversation as part of our future plans? And I'm sure that we do, but just sort of wanted to broach that a little bit. And I don't see this as a failing. I just see it as like there's just conversations that aren't happening. You know what I mean?
So I just want to interject quickly. This was a situation that happened. When I first taught freshman health at Concord High School. I chose a book and I chose a movie, and all of the kids had read the book and seen the movie for an English class and a social studies class in 8th grade.
Yeah.
So then I showed something else, and then I got sort of reprimanded by the 11th grade English teacher because that's a book that she taught in 11th grade. So we had to have like a sort of a school-wide. We sort of did it via email, but it was basically listing, so it's just something to think about. Listing what we used, books we wanted to use, and was there a class that had dibs on the book? Didn't mean we couldn't use it,
but just be
or
aware.
use it
I'm gonna
differently,
use
maybe
it
not
here.
the whole thing.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Dead Poet Society was a movie that touched on all sorts of things.
And it's so good.
Such a good one for Health 1, right? All that stuff. But it was in 2 other classes, and so by the time it's like, oh no, not this again.
But when you see the opportunity for engaging curriculum, you want to pounce on it because it's going to be relevant, and the kids are going to see it in the movie theater all together, and
Well, and,
like
and
it
I
makes
think
sense.
what might be happening in that case is I read The Wild Robot to my class in 2020 as a read aloud because it was a little bit advanced for some of the 3rd graders that were reading at that point. So if they had it read aloud to them in 3rd grade, they probably read it again in 5th grade or at 4th or 5th grade, and then when they get to Runlet now, we're doing it a 3rd time, and they're probably getting different things from it each time.
Oh, for sure.
But they're feeling like this is
For our ADHD kids, I
Yeah.
would just
Like
walk out
the-
the room.
sorry. So it's an interesting.
So sorry we just
No,
piled
it's very-
on before you got to respond.
It's
But
a very, very, very good question. I appreciate it, Sarah. We have, as part of the strategic plan, alignment of curriculum K through 12. And we've started to do that work, if you recall, through our professional learning communities at our professional development days, 1 to 3. So this November 5th and March 21st, all content-based persons will be getting together, 6 through 12. So all ELA teachers, 6 through 12, will be meeting. And we've started sort of a backwards design. We've started reviewing the curriculum at the high school, and then we'll move to Runlet, and then we'll trickle it down to elementary so that we can, and then we'll have that great document, the curriculum framework, so that we'll be able to say, part of our job is to make sure, like, are we repeating too many standards? Like if the power standard I chose for 3rd grade is also the power standard for 5th grade, then maybe we should eliminate that standard.
Yeah.
So the work has started, and the conversations
Brilliant.
have started.
and it's going to take a long time. It's as all these things do. So,
But the
thank
other
you
thing
for
I would
making
mention
inroads.
too is that if a parent has that type of a concern, they could talk to the classroom teacher too. And
Oh,
just
for
ask-
sure. And also, like, it's established. Like, I'm not going to ask you to pick a new book in, like, almost November. Like, that's unreasonable to ask a teacher to do. But just, like, I think it's just really nice to hear that it's already a part of our planning and that, like, if other folks are watching this and that's a concern they might have, they can know our curriculum team and our literacy teams are focusing on this, and we're going to get there. Just to be patient.
That's right. That's cool. Perfect summary.
You can't forget too that teachers are always trying to provide materials to youngsters based on their interests, based on their
Pop
their
culture.
level of
Yes.
reading.
Yeah,
And so
yeah, of course.
as a teacher, you might give a set of book to one youngster and something different for another youngster based on their interest and ability. So that really challenges our teachers to,
Of course.
you know, to be able to have the lessons that are learned in those pieces of literature, and still give kids excitement about the book that they're going to
Right.
use. So
And not
It
provide
is a
some kind of
challenge
book
for
that's
them.
going to
Yeah.
trigger a parent or like there's so many other things that go into
Right.
it too.
I just want to say thank you. I know that
Yes.
this is hard work. It's not quick work. And we can see that you have been working on this for years.
So hard.
But
It's
it's one
exciting,
of
though.
the things
We are
that makes
excited. It's good
Concord
stuff.
special, I think, is that we have teams that work together over years
Yes.
to make sure we're doing the very best we can. So, well done.
Thanks
you.
for doing such great work.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank
Please
you
tell
for
the
your
other
time.
reading specialists too.
I will. I will
Appreciate all
pass
of
it
the
along
work. And the
100%.
team.
Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you all.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks for taking the time.
Yes.
thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Next, I think we are going to have Fern, yes, Fern? Oh, and Tim, right?
We're here to talk about the 2023 Youth Risk Behavior Survey.
So next, we'll be hearing from the high school team, part of the high school team, about the 2023 Youth Risk Behavior Survey that was conducted. Is this very
voted on for this weekend?
Yes.
Yes. We talked about that at NHSBA.
Right.
That's
No, yeah, there's no vote here, but
Oh,
No,
did.
no. We
did in
just
the
had
past.
a.
I'm making connections.
There was
Yeah.
We're linking
I
things.
don't mean to scare anyone. We're not. Sorry.
There's no votes!
Can I to listen to me, guys?
no vote for you.
No.
Are you able
What's
to?
that? Oh, no.
It's happening.
Oh,
I'm having
sorry.
trouble.
It's happening.
It's just a little
It didn't work the last time I
The
tried.
wheel of death.
You gotta go and get
Have they gotten into,
Here we go.
Percy Jackson?
They're reading it for school.
Oh, here we go.
Audio. I love Percy Jackson.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. So tonight we're here to talk about the 2023 Youth Risk Behavior Survey, supporting youth at our high school. And Tim and I work together. I just want to preface this by what we did is take 103 questions, and we together with a team looked at, what are some things we want to pull out from this and focus on tonight, but there is a lot more information here, there we go, than we're talking about. So this is just a small amount, but pulling out some of the important trends that we see. So we're going to start with Tim talking about what this survey is about.
The Youth Risk Behavior Survey gives us a overview of students' behaviors that could cause a variety of harms or could impact their educational experience, impact their mental well-being, and it gives us data to look at to determine what interventions, what preventions that we could put in place at Concord High School, what resources are needed to support our students, and we're able to compare this data across other schools in the region, other schools in the state, and it gives us a way of looking at the behaviors that are, what's the word I'm looking for? Could be,
Markers.
yeah, the risky behaviors that students engage in that could impact them in a negative light, mentally, social, emotionally, as well as health-wise.
Can I ask a question already?
Go right
I've got
ahead.
one too, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Is the data public where we can see us compared to other districts?
I have shared it with our communications director to make sure that we can have this posted in a place that is accessible. Yeah.
Okay. I'd love to be able to share that just because there's other conversation happening about costs per student and the fact of all the services we do offer here in Concord. This would be great to look at
Yeah.
what we're doing. So that's where I'm going with that.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's excellent data to share.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and my question is around the percentage of students who interacted in the survey, because I understand we had a recent a new RSA come into law that it's now an opt-in situation, so parents have to approve taking this, whereas it was blanketed over the entirety of the student body previously.
To answer that question, it's twofold. One, yes, because there's been a lot more of an opportunity to opt out in the past. It was a blanket survey that we gave, so we got a considerable amount more participation. But I'd also add that in the last 3 years, we've tried really hard to engage seniors in the survey. It is very difficult because there isn't a single course or like advisory period where seniors are there and you
Together,
can get that data. So it is very much so voluntarily for our senior class. And if you look at the data, they're the lowest participants. But it's something we work at every year, discussing when can we do it, what time of the year could we do it, what period block makes the most sense so we get the majority of the student population using it. And it's difficult too because oftentimes the opt-out reason for some of our older students, such as seniors, is, well, by the time you get the data, we're gone anyway, so why do I have to take this survey?
Yeah.
But it does, and the reality, it gives us a picture of current challenges students at Concord High School are facing. And as you brought up earlier, it gives us an opportunity to advocate for resources for students.
Right.
It's every year the admin team working with the counseling staff try and figure out the best way to do this to get the most participation.
Oh, I have no doubt. But I think it's when people see a 61% participation rate,
Yep.
I want folks to know that it's because we genuinely need students to opt in
Yep.
to taking a cumbersome and very long quiz about really deeply personal things. But it's essential data for us as an education system to know where are our kiddos meeting struggle and how can we support them. So just more of an explainer question than anything else.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah.
And this survey occurs every 2 years, so that, again, going back to the statement I just made about oftentimes students in the senior class aren't, or families aren't necessarily like seeing the huge benefit of them doing it because they do move on before we get the data back and are able to take any action on the data. Some of the results are compared to both the state as well as the region. The region is specific to like the Merrimack County. It's really actually the area agency, which easiest way to describe it for this would be like geographically about the Merrimack County area, but could exceed a few towns outside of it. But so we get compared to other schools in that. And as we go through this presentation, keep that in mind. And the data you'll see is us compared to both state and the region. Substance use trends at Concord High School. So lower levels in all four of the major areas. So the four major areas: tobacco, alcohol, use of prescription drugs, and marijuana. So those are the four major areas. It does take a look at other behaviors such as driving, wearing a bicycle helmet, what else? Vaping, you'll see data on vaping. So it does look at other areas, social areas, screen time. We're learning more and more about the impacts of screen time on students. So it does take a look at some of those areas, but the four major focused areas of the survey are tobacco, alcohol, prescription drugs, and marijuana. So the percentage of youth reporting alcohol use in the past 30 days is down 15.9%. Over the past decade, over the past 10 years, we've seen that drop overall in the students taking the survey, something that we're proud about. Again, the use of marijuana has dropped considerably, 7.5% over students reporting to have used it in the past 30 days. And again, if you look at use of vaping products, that continues to be a decline, slow, but continues to be a decline at 8.5%. What trends that we are seeing spikes in, or at least, I wouldn't say spikes, but are concerning to us, females are more likely than males to be using a vape device in school. Why? Or in or out of school, why is that? What is it that is occurring to our young female adolescents that's causing them to turn to a substance? And 11th graders overall in the high school reported using rate of vaping at the highest percentage. Here is the data that, I don't like that any students participating in some of these risk behaviors, but the data does show that we are doing better than the state and the region across the 5 major categories. With the vaping being, again, below all schools in this Merrimack County, essentially, as well as well below the state average by almost 5% there. Tobacco and prescription drug use has greatly declined in the last decade. That's another area that we'd like to highlight, and again, we're below state and regional. Alcohol and marijuana use continues to be some of the higher use that we see, so.
And the prescription drugs is really good news because that has gone down quite a bit in the past decade, which of course we know is really essential.
And then this is just something to highlight. When you're digging into each of these, you try, some of the questions are prodding at factors like what's helping to deter or what's causing a student to turn to a substance. And something that was really compelling for us to share is that students who considered using prescription drugs credited self-perception of using it to be wrong as a deterrent from using it, or their friend's perception, if they were to use a prescription drug, that it was wrong, deterred them, or even nicer is a parent's perception that it would be wrong if they were to use a prescription substance has deterred that behavior. So I just think that's a key thing to show that kids are feeling connected to individuals in this community.
That's great.
Yeah. So then, we have definitely a need to continue supporting youth and learning about how to have safe and healthy relationships. There's a whole section of this survey that focuses on questions about, risky behavior as it relates to relationships. And females reporting at much higher rates in this area. One thing that stood out to me in looking at it was the need for that females were actually really using resources to look for information, whereas males were far less likely. And there is still a need for learning about consent, which is so essential, such an essential skill before students graduate. And so within the area of sexual and dating violence, these are some of the disparities between females and males that really stood out to us, and the experiences that they've had. This question is asked for, rather than the last 30 days, in the last 12 months, in terms for people who had been in relationships. So it's a subset of all respondents. So you see that that we still have a lot of work and want to continue. And we'll learn later on about some of the hard work that is going on already to teach kids in this area through our health class and through our student assistance program. And then there's a lot on mental health. And this is where, just to get back to something Tim was saying, this data is important for our school, but it's also really important for it's actually DHHS, the Department of Health and Human Services, that really supports the work. So for instance, if we are going to reach out for help with this, we're reaching out to DHHS for help with this survey because it's used as a public health measure as well. So it's really essential that we take part in this survey because it helps our whole state, not just our educational system, but our whole state to understand where to focus our attention. And mental health, as you've probably been reading about, especially as it relates to females, has been a big topic area. Now, the good news is that there are many indicators that have shown some improvements, and I think sometimes we get lost in the really bad news, but there have been improvements since 2021. As you can imagine, there was COVID inside that period of time. I think the last time people took this, it was right in the middle of COVID, and people were struggling to get that information, 2023. And so it'll be interesting to read about how kids do this year. But there have been improvements. The gap in gender is a serious concern. Much more depression and people reporting poor mental health, more females than males. But again, the asking for help piece is more likely to be the males needing help. So again, and what we know about mental health issues is that a lot of times some of the more serious concerns with suicide prevention are with males because of that issue. So we need to kind of stay honed in on this information and understand how to respond to it. And the one thing that both Tim and I, when we were going through this, we both highlighted this, is that it was really interesting that we're doing something really well in this. It stood out because it was such a different number. We're far more likely, the students in this at Concord High School, to say that they asked for help. For those who had been in a critical situation where they were considering suicide, they were far more likely than any other in the region and state to ask for help. And so that was that really touched me a lot, and I was really pleased to see that. And finally, this is just so I could kind of put a emphasis on the difference between male and females and how this will be helpful, right? Because we'll take our resource, we'll start thinking about what kind of groups can we run, what kind of resources can we bring to the females and to the males in terms of how can we get out more help-seeking messaging for males, and for females, how can we get them the help they need? But these are different indicators that just were, and each of these are one question. So these are how and you can see the disparity, 40.7 versus 19, so double the number of people reporting this. Some people wonder, about maybe it's that girls are more likely to be honest on that survey and males not. We don't know, but this is a very validated, and I wanted to say that publicly, it's a very highly validated survey. So when the people do kind of push back, it's really important to remember that these are all dealt with statistically. There's a very high level CDC survey, so it's got a lot of highly validated areas.
And this slide really speaks to one of the current trends that we're concerned about is the amount of screen time students are spending in a day. And as you can see, Concord High School is no exception to that. We definitely are both males and females, 81.1% and 75.5% saying they spend 3 or more hours a day screen time between individual devices, Chromebooks, computers. They're in front of a screen. Going back to something that I think is really highlighted in the data that Fern just shared is students feeling connected. A majority of the students at Concord High School feel that they matter in the community. So the people who took the survey, 54% indicated that. It would, in addition to that, 82% of them that took the survey did say they knew one or more adult besides their parents that they would confide in, with important questions affecting their lives. And students believe that they help decide what happens at their school, 72.1%.
I love that.
So
good.
So it just speaks to the culture we're building, and it's something that we're constantly working on. An area that I'd be remiss if I didn't show you areas of needs I still have, because it's my data and that's what makes up Concord High School, is higher than average percentage, both in the region and state. We are reporting bullying to occur or harassment to occur, whether it be cyber or in person. And in addition to that, students feeling unsafe coming into the building. So we had a higher percentage. Is our percentage... has it spiked in the last couple of years? It has not spiked, but what has happened is we have exceeded the state and the region. Go ahead.
Dr. Herbert, how do we compare on these numbers to other municipalities across the state as opposed to just like our region? Because we are the largest
True.
district in our region. So I can imagine that because we have a really diverse student body, I know we have a lot of racial bullying that happens. That's part of living in New Hampshire. Do you think that part of this has to do with our size and the fact that we deal with a lot of issues that other districts simply may not?
There's a lot of factors. I mean, you do have the statewide, but that's I think to Sarah's point. I mean, if you were to compare us to Hillsborough County specifically, how do we match up against Nashua or Manchester, Bedford?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Schools our size, and to be honest. There's data you can gather from the Department of Education to dig into that and look at the referrals that are reported in any given year. That's not necessarily through this survey that could give us that sort of comparison.
Right.
What often happens is through our networks of administrators and school counselors is we would go and we'd share, this is a challenge that Concord High School is facing, and Manchester or Rochester may say, hey, this is what we're trying because we're facing a similar thing.
Right.
So I can't say that I have the data to compare to other municipalities, but I can say the way we interact as in our state networks with our data, we're constantly sharing and talking about it, and our challenges are no different from anywhere else.
Yeah.
And it's in a lot of areas we are ahead of the curve in the prevention and intervention we provide. In other areas we still have stuff to learn, and this is one area I would highlight and say it clearly speaks to something that we have to dig into and find the school and the state through our networks that is doing well here, and what have you guys instituted. I will add, I mean, we've done some universal work, and Brenda's been part of that team around how we can bring more community to our advisory program at the high school. Our restorative work has really begun to pick up and show some benefits of that.
Nice.
This survey was in like year one of that work.
That is a good point, too.
It really
Yeah.
would be interesting to see what the impacts we've had. So we're talking about students who took this in 2022.
Right.
We're not talking about the current situation at Concord High School. So even in 2022, we were headed in the right direction. But that's what we do. So I don't necessarily have Manchester's data to compare, but I would be able to.
I wouldn't expect you to
Yeah.
either. We have what we need,
Yeah.
right? But I was just more of a curiosity than anything else because, I can imagine that certain issues that affect districts have a lot to do with this, where the student body is coming from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for humoring me.
No problem. All right. So, other difficulties. So, again, I can't just show all the roses in an improvement in our data. That we have other areas that we look at and we plan to dig in on, or we've already begun to dig in on that. Just the 32.1% of students reporting having a problem with alcohol or drug use. We have from our student assistance program counselors who are running groups to our counselors at the high school who are being trained in DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy to assist students who are dealing with trauma, to universal strategies that we're trying to form these positive relationships so students will confide in somebody that they need assistance. So there's several things that we're doing on these fronts already as a school, and we'll hope to see these percentages change. But in addition to that, other areas, 40.7% students haven't lived with someone who has been depressed, mentally ill, or suicidal. Again, speaking to the mental health situation in our community, and that our students are not sheltered from that, and they bring that with them into our school. And one of the best things we can do, again, is build that sense of community that they matter and there's people they can reach out to help them get the resource. Because there's one thing we've been fortunate with our partnerships with like Riverbend, our student adjustment counselor, our ELL social worker, these services that's been afforded to us by this board has helped us provide the students with the interventions or begin the process of accessing the necessary interventions. And we're fortunate to have that. And then I think the last piece really speaks to, our student adjustment counselor work and our school counselors work, and as well as our ELL social worker, that, the number of students who have not necessarily been staying at their house are transient living situations is a reality, and the students that are having challenges of staying home and running for different reasons are running away from home. These are serious things and that continue to challenge our students. And I will say more often than not, those students are found at school, in their class, in our lunchroom. So there's something to be said about the community we're providing them. And they engage with us, and we're able to work with them, their families, and find the resources that are needed. So. The next couple slides will dig a little bit deeper into this, but every data we look at as an administrative team, as our building leadership team with our counseling group, we think prevention, what can be done before. We talk about intervention, what can we do when we are made aware of a challenge, and then a very targeted intervention or intense intervention for some of the what we would label as a tier 3 need for students. Some of the prevention stuff, our advisory program I mentioned, building those positive relationships between students and adults, our restorative practices specific, that universal restorative practice of building community. Again, national health education standards. What we teach in our health classes covers, I venture to say, almost all of the topics, questions, and themes throughout this survey. So right now, the requirements at Concord High School is about a semester and a quarter credit of it. So 1.5 over the time between health and PE is what's required. So at least a semester and then an integrated course with both health and PE. Students are being exposed to the education they need to be able to advocate for themselves around these topics. The Students Assistant Program Counselor, who does a lot of our substance use work, and helping students to find alternatives to substances to cope or to manage whatever challenges they're facing, has been a huge resource for us. But in addition to that, she engages the students at Concord High School to build awareness about these areas of concerns about healthy. She builds. They put up bulletin boards and hold events where they're educating us about healthy relationships. Where they're what was the last one? Was it Red Ribbon Week? I believe was one of the last things. One of the last events that we just had going on at Concord High School, spearheaded through our student assistance program counselor with students. So she's engaging the students in this work as well. Our Crimson Cultures are focused on those essential skills needed to be successful, and they apply to this as much as anywhere else, with the communication, collaboration with others to really get beyond the challenges that they face, and then getting to the why, really understanding why they're at Concord High School. What is it they want to do after they leave Concord High School? What is the purpose? Getting to that with students, giving them that sense of hope and direction is a key thing for us for prevention.
Tim, can I ask, the PE and health classes and the student assistance program, are students required to take those, and is it yearly? So
the student assistance program is not a requirement. That is a resource similar to a counselor at the school. You may how would I put this? So any staff member could bring a student to the attention of the student assistance program counselor, and they would, depending what the need is, either help find the right person for them to seek out, or would meet with the student and determine if there is a need for them to continue to meet with the student assistance program counselor. In addition to that, they're one of our interventions in our MTSS systems of support, our multi-tiered systems of support. Tier 2 focuses on really the reactionary, when things have happened and we're trying to right the ship. We've used the student program counselor for healthy relationships, girl groups, boy groups. We've also used her for substance use, dealing with a family member who has substance use, and other mental health awareness as well. So those groups are either done through referral, identified through school counselors, or some are thematic things that she puts out as a whole, and any student who would like to participate could participate in it. So the SAP counselor is completely a resource. The health curriculum provided by our health teachers is we have a half credit that's required of an actual health class that they have to take over their 4 years. And then there's a quarter credit integrated course, we would call it, where you get a quarter credit health, quarter credit PE, so between the two you get 0.75, 0.75.
Over 4 years.
Over 4 years.
Do you think that's enough?
No, I don't.
Is it still a quarter at a time?
No, we did move it to half credits,
'Cause I
so
remember when I
it's
was-
improved.
Yeah, when I was a health educator, first semester freshman, all freshmen should have had health first semester, like every single one of them. Because by the end of freshman year, when you've got quarter 4 now, these kids have either learned what they've learned from their friends, which is dubious at best. I remember just thinking to myself, wow, this makes no sense. And then they didn't used to come again for health until junior year, which is a whole different set of challenges at that time.
And Brenda, I would say some of our course offerings are, they try to, every so often we put in these course and the program of studies that really dig into some of these pieces. Healthy relationships was a course. And what happens is we have to forego running those courses to make sure we're hitting state standards that we required. And we don't necessarily have the FTEs to offer those courses unless we're cutting something else. But we have very few electives outside of the state requirements, so in that area. So the life studies and health.
Might be a way for us to look at maybe seeing if we can fluff you up a little bit there at some point, because
That's been necessary forever.
these are life
Yeah.
skills.
Yeah.
This is important stuff.
Is there still a life skills class? Is that still offered?
So it's integrated into another class. Oftentimes when we can't run a full course like we have in the past or would like to, we integrate it we try and put a unit into another course. So there are life studies courses. We have cooking, which is a popular one, but we also have like applications of lifetime wellness. We also have career connected learning course that we've offered to help people really see what the goal is at the end of high school and really make connections to healthy life choices, styles, organizing themselves to really focus on their goals. So we've done that in the last couple of years, offered those. But when we can't offer a course, it becomes a unit lesson a week or two within one of the courses we can offer.
And if we've got 60% of our students that are expressing that they felt depressed over a significant amount of time, then maybe some of these courses would help them work their way out of that.
And there's no shortage of student requests for these courses. They fill the course selection sheet out every year. We have what we have for FTE, so we have to make tough decisions.
So when you come to us in February with some needs, that might be a
Absolutely.
nice one to bring us. Thank you.
This right here is some of the work that a SAP counselor has done with students and really trying to get the information out there. These are bulletin boards. You can't tell from this, but they're rather large throughout our building, strategically located where students are gathering. In our student center up on Main Street, as they walk through some of our main lobbies, calculated stairwells and areas they go to receive services. We put these all over the place in the building, so that this is some of the examples of that work that happens when students really get involved.
I wanted to just add that we have an SAP counselor also at the middle school. And they work very closely together. They actually work very nicely in tandem with one another. And so you'll see these similar themes at the middle school as well, with middle school voice. And he is very, very active, very similarly to our high school person, Amy Tucker at the high school. So it's a very, very important part of this district's offering of these. They're both very well informed and doing really excellent work.
And again, with some of our braided funding, how that's paid for is twofold. Part of it comes out of a grant that we wrote last year. So for SAP counselors, that we get a portion of what they are, and then portion comes out of, my related service budget. So it's kind of where that falls. Just if you're looking for like where do those positions fall, that's
Right
where
on.
they are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, that's great.
And I would be remiss, the next picture is of, we have, as you know, received significant grants that are for addressing mental health at the very intensive Tier 3 level. And we also received another grant, Project Aware, that is for supporting youth at the more early intervention and prevention level. So we have all three tiers covered. And already we're seeing at the top right is an image of two of the people who are partners that we have. One with NAMI New Hampshire, who is our family peer support specialist, somebody with lived experience who works with families directly. And we have developed, it's been a lot of work to lift this up to integrate these different positions into the system that already exists. As you know, from sort of thinking from a management perspective, it's hard to do that, right? Yep. They are phenomenal. And the person on the left in the picture is our Riverbend liaison. So she is in the schools. She's in our middle and high school. We have another person on the bottom one who's in our elementary school. And I like to think of this youth risk behavior survey from a broader perspective, in that it speaks to our entire district, because we can all take this and say, what do we have to do at every level, and sort of roll this back. Because so for instance, bullying numbers at the high school can be really owned by all of us, or what does a healthy relationship mean can really be owned by all of us. Even our youngest kids can learn about what does it mean to be a friend, and how do I express myself? What does it mean to be assertive? And so on the left is a club that was started at the middle school by Sarah Ames, who is the Riverbend liaison, to talk about just ways to stay healthy. And so I just wanted to share that. We're already starting to roll out a lot of really great things, and have a lot of work that we're going to be doing with the high school, particularly around the issues that we've been talking about tonight.
This slide really encompasses a lot of what I shared earlier as to our response and how we look at this data and what we do with it. And it's really advocating for these interventions that can help us support our students, from the SAP counselor to the DBT training that our counselors are receiving, to the social worker and the homeschool liaison we have available at Concord High School. The co-located therapist at Riverbend located at our school helps. That in itself helps so substantially when it comes to intakes and getting students the services they need. It goes exponentially faster having that person located at the high school. And then check in and check out is one of our programs similar to restorative practices that's trying to build that community of support around the students and build those positive relationships. It gives them a great start to their day. They come in with their trusted adult, share how they're feeling today, what's my goal for the day, and what do I need to achieve my goal, and then they leave with their plan in hand. So, there is a range of supports we have to the intensive and targeted interventions, going from, we have a clinical psychologist services available, Renew, which is a program that we have several counselors on site trained on to really work with students through difficult trauma paths that they are unpacking, to be able to be at school and access their academics. We have that co-located Riverbend therapist and liaison that serves as early intervention with some groups, but it also helps with some targeted intervention with individuals. Our social work and homeschool liaison and the supports they have been able to provide for families in transitional living situations, families who have experienced domestics and need support in finding resources. These two have been a huge resource to our families. Our partnership with NAMI New Hampshire, again, the resources, the trainings that are provided, as well as the family peer support specialists we have on site is is, again, an intensive targeted intervention that helps us meet the needs of our students. Check and Connect is something that's new this year. We've sent an individual out to Minnesota?
Yep, Minnesota. This is, again, a grant-supported intervention that's highly, known to be very highly effective, and a lot of people are starting to pick up on this. It's been around for a while, but we are starting to look at implementing this. I'm really excited as a Tier 3. It's sort of, we've done a lot with a check-in, check-out program, which is about relationship building, but we're finding at the higher levels it's not exactly what's needed. So this is is a really exciting program. And again, the grant's really helping us to explore these kinds of options that would have been really hard to do without that support. So we were able to send, and this is also at the middle school as well. So both school psychologists at both schools went out to Minnesota to learn about this program, and we're now doing the trainings and talking about implementation.
And the see something, say something can be anonymous, or some more and more we're getting it where the student is leaving their name. Or the person who's reporting it is leaving their name. And I think that just speaks to the trust that continues to be built, and the people knowing that if I give this information, something's going to happen with it.
So that's our presentation. I mean, Tim and I said we could really talk about this all night, and so we know you don't have all night. But do you have any questions?
I mean, you've been very generous to answer them as we go, too.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Just how important this work is, because we had a presentation, as you saw earlier, about the fantastic reading changes that are happening, but if our kids aren't well, then all of the most wonderful programs in the world,
It's going to do nothing.
they aren't going to make any difference.
Yeah.
So we've got to really work on that part of it. It's
Yeah.
the whole child.
Yeah, it really is, and we're so fortunate to have this work happening here. There's so much, going on in this district to support kids, and with these grants, and it's even more to kind of build that out and create sustainable systems.
Great work, y'all.
Thank
you.
you.
So much. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having us. I'm really glad to share this. Whoops, let me just get rid of it.
All right, next up, I believe we're going to take a moment and look at the calendar.
Well, if you noticed in the agenda that Mrs. Yarlott only gave me 5 minutes on this, so
That's all you get.
It appears that I better be, with great haste, present, this is a proposed calendar for next year. And it's pretty self-explanatory, but understand there are 177 of instructional days. We go by hours, and as you know, our days are a little bit longer, so we get those hours in quite comfortably at 177. We also have a teacher contract, which is for a 184 days. That's an increase this year of one more day for teachers. So those are the two guidelines for us as we build this calendar. I sent this calendar off to our educational assistants. I also sent it off to our CEA group, Teachers Association, for their input. Also talked with principals and the central office staff here. So next steps really was to bring a proposal to this group with some hope that we could get it ready for November. The only reason I say that is that it's critically important that I have a calendar to share with the schools that are sending schools to our CTE. There's 9 of them, and they need to know what the schedule is so that they can do their calendars, and they do depend on what we do here in Concord.
Right,
So
there's a law that forces
this
all of
isn't easy, but I like to try to get it out as soon as I can.
Yeah.
So our big conundrum around Christmas vacation, would it be beneficial to reach out to those schools and say, what do you guys do for Christmas vacation?
Yeah, I haven't done that since they follow our,
They'll do what we do?
yeah, that's what they tend to do, is do what we do. And
Okay, so weather and busing and all that kind
yeah,
of stuff.
yeah. I think that the issue for me this year, and what I'd like you to look at, is the months are pretty laid out pretty nicely. It's the December, if you look at December, and there's 2 days, the 22nd and the 23rd, that I have as going to school. All right, that, again, I want to repeat, this is a proposal. And
negotiable.
it's negotiable. And then look at January. New Year's is on Thursday, the 1st. And so I say to myself, do I bring back all the youngsters in the second for one day after a holiday, after a long vacation, and have to open up schools? Remember, when I open up schools, that's raising the temperature, that's doing all the, in some ways that's a little bit of a cost savings if you keep it close. But here's the other thing. Go to the end of the year, in June. Last year, we got out early. We had only, if you recall, maybe 2 days, if any, snow days and some delayed openings. We were able to have a fairly nice, it was that same week, by the way. It was the 12th, the 11th or 12th last year that we got out. I think maybe the 13th. And then graduation followed right after. It was beautiful, right? We got a lot of feedback from teachers how much they appreciated it, because they had a couple of weeks to kind of get rested and relaxed, only to turn around in July, and start doing our summer school programs. And then we have a number of our staff that do summer school. So it really gave them a little bit of a breather. And then they also felt like they had a regular summer break, and were ready to come back in August with a lot of vim and vigor, as the principals told me. So I'm sort of struggling. One of the suggestions from your colleagues on the executive committee was, could we come back and could we propose to the unions that we come back the week before the 25th, which would be, we would need 2 days that week, do the teacher workshops that day, then come in on the 25th with students.
Yeah.
That way we could still have those 2 days in December and not bring kids back right before the holiday,
I love that idea.
right?
Would that eliminate, and that would, I'm so sorry.
No, go.
Barb.
I was just gonna say, having the kids start on that Monday would take away those single days of no childcare in August, where you have one day of school but not another day of school, and so a 4-day start, we're jumping right in, but all those working parents will be like, yay.
But we still have the 29th as a long weekend too, for the kids.
I just think that's a positive, because I know that's a really frustrating week,
Yeah.
because school on some days, not on the others.
So I'm kind of looking for your recommendation, and I will go back and revisit this again, but your recommendation is important.
I like that recommendation, because if I'm looking at August, and 25th and 26th are teacher workshop days, I mean, students aren't in school. They are in school the 27th and 28th, and then off the 29th. So that's a 2-day week for families, and that could get tricky.
Right, that's what I was just
So if the kids were in, for, as Barb said, for the 4 days, the Monday through Thursday, and the teachers had come in the week prior to that for their in-service days, then they would have the 2 weeks at Christmas. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that
I
would
like
be the
that.
compromise for them to get.
Get my kids in August.
But there's probably a lot of parents that would say, let's keep the kids till the 23rd of December, so they can get all of their Christmas stuff done too. But at the same time, I think they're ready for a break.
Yeah.
The 2 weeks is so
And
nice.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, it is. And for families that travel, that's.
Well, that was one of, I met with Michael Macri today, and Michael did say that he was concerned about the traveling, the 22nd, 23rd, and all the other preparations that go along
Yeah.
with the holidays. And there's a lot of holidays. It isn't just Christmas.
It isn't just Christmas,
I
right.
want to be
Right.
clear about that. A lot of our families are celebrating different holidays over that time. I actually checked the calendar, and I think there's a celebration, Jewish celebration during that time. There's also
Chris Mahana Kwanzaa.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
right. So
Everybody would.
I think that key is, can we remember now in June, I still have to put in 5 snow days. That's by requirement. When I submit this, the calendar goes to the Department of Ed, and they need to see the 5 days are built in. Should we have a catastrophic winter? Let's just we've had a few of those over time, right? If they know that you've built in the 5, used the 5, and you needed more, they tend to waiver those.
Gotcha.
So that's why it's important that I demonstrate that the district is going to have 5 built in. Exactly.
So
exactly.
in the case of a catastrophic winter, the last day of school would be June 19th?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
You just laid out the law with that.
That's a mic drop.
But it won't it's gonna be nice. We're gonna have a nice winter.
Well, you made a significant effort to cool our buildings too. We have a much better environment,
Right.
except we will, we'll start next summer with high school, but.
I mean, it's getting hotter and hotter
Right,
earlier and earlier.
right. I mean,
it's gonna be in the
today's a good
70s
example,
this week.
right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
I'm sensitive to that, but you have made an effort in your elementary schools. Your high school will be next summer. Obviously, Runlet is one that is going to be
Hot.
continued to be debated, and but we certainly want to do some HVAC systems in the new facility.
Sure.
So,
Great, thank you. No,
what
that
would
looks
you?
great.
What's your?
I-
Do you have a recommendation?
Would our recommendation be that
Yep.
we
Yeah.
have the teachers come back the week before in August? Yeah. Giving 2 weeks at Christmas. A hopeful last day of June 12th and a catastrophe last day of the 19th. Catastrophic.
I catastrophize constantly, so I've already imagined all those scenarios.
I love
Can I get a
eyes and
motion?
words.
If that's the motion, can I get a second for that?
A second eyes?
I did it in 7 minutes. I just want you to know that.
Fantastic.
This is your lot.
And it's been seconded, the motion was
All right,
made
I
by
didn't
me.
get it. A motion by you? Okay.
Second by Ms. Higgins. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? It passes 4-0.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
I would move adjournment.
I would second that.
Thank you.
All
Look
those
at
in
us
favor?
agreeing on something.
We agree on a lot, Barb.
I just love that.
All those in favor?
Aye. I need to laugh right now.
This meeting is adjourned.
Yeah, I
Thank
bet
you.
you could use some laughter in your life right now. How you doing?
I knew that my